Welcome, Annie Collins here for the Maker's Movement. Today we'll be creating this lovely floral card. Let's go over the products I used to create this project. The Maker's Movement Give Thanks stamp set. This stamp set contains 12 pieces. It has 2 heart images, a floral bouquet image, and 3 solid leaf stamps. It has several sentiments like there's so much to be thankful for, give thanks with a grateful heart, happy Thanksgiving, welcome autumn, and gather. Today we'll be using just the floral bouquet and the sentiment there's so much to be thankful for. We'll also be using the Versa dies, perfect foam cutting dies, and these are deep ridge dies. They're actually made to cut our Kraft foam so that you can use them for your shaker cards and such. Now the Kraft foam, as you can see, is quite thick, so these dies cut right through this foam quite easily. We have a variety of shapes of these in squares, circles, and other little shapes to cut your foam down to whatever size you need. It cuts this thick foam, but it also cuts thin materials as well. So you can use them for from thick to thin. It doesn't matter what materials it is. It also cuts fabric. All right, so now we'll also be bringing in the Maker's Movement Shaker Sprinkles and Hocus Pocus. You're thinking, how are you making a floral card with Hocus Pocus? Let me show you the Hocus Pocus blend real quick. It contains little bats, little yellow moons, and 2 stars, one in a pale orange and a pale lavenderly purple. So there are the little black bats, moon, and such. But I'm only going to be pulling out the stars. I'll be using 2 of the pumpkiny or the pale orange and 2 of the lavender stars. Now I've went ahead and stamped and colored this floral bouquet. I stamped it with the Tuxedo black ink and I colored it with my Copic markers. Now for these little gold frames, I used the same Versa dies and I cut them from foiled Kraft cardstock. The rest of these I'll just save for other cards throughout the season. I just going to use the larger one. I have an A2 side folding card and a 110-pound brown cardstock. Here I'm using the thin Kraft foam that I've run through my Xyron Creative Station Lite so that I can have a double-sided foam. I cut those with the Versa dies. Again, I'm only going to use the larger one. For our sentiment, we'll be using the Delicata in gold and glitz and some embossing powder, which is clear embossing powder. So now that we've gone through everything, let's get started on our project. First, we're going to start off with stamping our sentiment. I'm bringing in my stamping platform. I have my stamp centered where I want it, and I'm going to remove the lid here just so I can ink it up for the first time so you can see what I'm doing. My platform is bigger than my craft space here where I'm recording. It fits normally, but while I'm recording, it's kind of tight. So I'm just going to ink it up really quick, and I'll stamp it off. And I'll stamp this twice so I can get a nice impression. I press down firmly, but not hard, so I don't want to distort my sentiment. Get one, and then I'll do it again because I want a nice rich color here. And then I'm going to remove my panel and pour some clear embossing powder onto it. Get my little coffee filter here. And this is Imagine Craft's embossing powder in clear. I'll cover the sentiment, shake off the excess, make sure I have it well covered. Once I do, I'm going to first filter back in my embossing powder before I spill it everywhere. Set that off to the side. Grab my little clothespin here so that I can keep my fingers out of the heat, and my heat tool. I have my heat tool heating up, and now I'm going to heat it from underneath first to get that embossing powder just to stick, and then I'll heat it from on top and heat it until it's completely melted. You'll know it's melted when it goes from a matte finish to a nice shiny gloss finish. So I'm going to put it down to cool, put my heat gun up, and now we can start assembling our card. So I'm going to bring in the rest of the components to our card. And we're going to start by adhering our panel, our brown panel, to our card base. And it's the same size. It's an A2 size, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to use some liquid glue on the back of this panel. Get those corners so it doesn't peel up. And this one's easy to put down since they measure the same exact same. Yeah. So now for our frame. So I'm going to remove a portion of this backing off the foam, and I'm going to adhere my frame. And I'm just going to pinch it between my thumb and my index finger, and then push it down. I do it little by little so that it doesn't distort my foam or my frame. Now just take your time, go slow. Once you get it on there, we're going to adhere this now to our card base. And I'm only going to peel off, again, a small portion of it. Here I teared off the corners and just bent it halfway down. Do the same thing to the opposite corner. So this way I can use the corners to manipulate to make sure everything's centered. Try to get it straight. And as you all know, if you've been following me, straight things lining up straight in me don't quite go. I don't know what's going on. I can't get a thing laid out straight to save my life. So once I have it set, hopefully, I start peeling back the rest of the adhesive backing and press that frame onto the panel. Well, onto our card base, I should say. Now all that's left is to adhere our colored and embossed panel. So I apply some liquid glue, and then I'm going to do my best to center this, which is a little bit easier because we have our frame there. I just want to leave a little bit of brown showing around the edges. Once that's pressed in place, you can leave it here and be done. But I wanted to embellish it a little bit further, like I said. So I'm going to bring in our little stars and hearts. I'm going to create little clusters on either corner, the upper left and lower right. And I'll be placing one of the lavender stars and one of the little light orange stars here, and one tiny little gold heart. I'll repeat the process in the other corner. And then I'm going to adhere one heart above and just below our sentiment to the left and to the right, opposite of where I put the other two clusters. And these little tiny hearts I just picked up at the local craft store. And now our card is complete. Now I'm just fussing to make sure I got all my hearts straight. And there you have it. Now I did do some centers of the flowers with some Sakura pen in gold, a metallic gold. And I filled in those little berries that are floating with the same metallic pen. So again, today we used the Versa dies to cut out not only our foam, but our golden frame here. And the Give Thanks stamp set, we used the floral bouquet here and the sentiment. And Hocus Pocus, we used our little clay hearts. Delicata ink for our sentiment, as well as embossing powder. I'll have everything listed in the description box below, as usual, with links. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you were inspired. Don't forget to like and subscribe.